We're going to kick off this noon panel, and I'm kind of excited because we have a unique opportunity in Oklahoma, and I'm an agriculture business coordinator, Johnny K. Squares at Mid-America Technology Center, so my job is to connect people to resources, and I've been in agriculture all my life, basically, and we have a small cattle operation. I've taught horticulture, been an ag teacher. I live and breathe ag, and I really love these people and any of you as I get to know you, because we still have a value system in agriculture that I feel like is untouched in any other compared to any other industry. We still value a handshake. We still value hard work ethic, and helping each other. And I'm always proud when we have these companies and individuals that have made a living in agriculture. Claudia Crow, 40-something years, a vegetable producer. Kudos to you, and you still are a rock star and a model to me because you have grit and passion and love for the industry. Shawnee Mills, we couldn't have this conference today without, I think, bringing them in. And they are so much bigger and broader, and they do so many more things than a lot of people can even envision within the state of Oklahoma. And I feel like we're really fortunate to get to have them here today on the panel and talk all about wheat, all about this industry and how it connects us in different capacities. And we've seen the Home Baking Act really blow up some things at the farmers markets in terms of products and things that we see. And those are value-added products that add to our wheat and add to the things that we do in the state of Oklahoma that we're really proud of. So today I have the opportunity, Caleb Winslet is going to be our first speaker from Shawnee Mills. I was laughing as I was talking to him. I said, so I heard you were a commodity broker and buyer for Shawnee Mills, and he's over here on his phone going, yes, I am. I'm buying stuff right now. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to leave you alone. I don't want you doing something or buying something that you didn't want to do there. And so, again, I think he wears a variety of hats, or I've been told you kind of have gotten to do a lot of different things. He was a former 4-H member, state officer. Was that right? And so, again, an agriculture economics major from Oklahoma State University, and I always have to toot the horn for OSU, for our land-grant college. And he's going to be our first speaker today. We have a great panel. What I like is he's going to share about their industry, what they do, how they connect to producers. Then we're going to visit and listen to Andrea Graves with OSU Food Ag Processing Center, which I still feel like is a best-kept secret. I don't want it to be a secret anymore. I want it to be on the tabloids and everybody's thoughts and minds. But they do so much phenomenal research and resources, and there's such a value to our state that I wish all of you, I would like to challenge you to take a tour, take some time, visit with them and see the things that they offer. They offer a lot of great classes and trainings, and their research facilities are phenomenal. And then I've asked Laura Carnegie to be on the panel because she's kind of connecting producer to how we use research at FAPSI, how we learn about education, but how she's bringing products to a local farmer's market at Norman, and just living to connect and connecting the resources. And I think that's what we're here today for, is how do we connect to our agricultural resources and we be productive and prosperous. So I'm going to turn it over to Caleb, let him start our panel.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you. Like she said, I'm the Vice President of Procurement at Shawnee Milling, and basically what that means is all supply chain headaches land on my desk. And so if you've paid attention to anything in the news in the last few years, it's been a wild ride, whether that's what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, whether it was COVID, whatever. We've had a fun time dealing with those things. But yeah, I'm a local guy. I grew up in Shawnee, went to high school at Bethel, moved away out of college and worked for a large agricultural firm. And then God chose to move me back to Shawnee, and where I've been here for 16 years working for Shawnee Milling Company. And Shawnee Milling Company is a fantastic family-owned company. We've been around since 1906. And it was founded by J. Lloyd Ford. He was a flour salesman for Acme Flour Company. Apparently that was a real thing. It's just not on cartoons. But there were some folks that said, hey, you know, there's a flour mill in Shawnee. You should buy it. So he scrounged up his life savings, and he bought the mill And at that time, it was a 15,000 bushel capacity flour mill. They produced like 200 pounds of flour a day. Small thing. But over most of the early 19th century or 1900s, he started buying other flour mills. And around the 1900s, there were about 60 to 70 flour mills, feed mills across the state. And he began purchasing those. And we owned about 15 to 20 of them at one point. Then you get into the 50s, and there were only about 40 mills. Today, there are 3 commercial flour mills in the state of Oklahoma, 2 of which are owned by Shawnee Milling. And now the one you see here, the big one on the your right, I guess, it's our Shawnee flagship facility, and then we own another facility in O'Keene. We've got over 2.8 million bushels of grain storage capacity, and we're producing over 1 million pounds of food and feed products a day, which is a lot of stuff. But as we went through that, we started, seeing opportunities for changes in our business. We've been around for 117 years. Things have changed, right? And so as we went through the 60s and 70s, we did a lot of just family flour, supplying our regional market. And then we started growing into international export business, and we did a lot of export flour. But then in the 80s, Bill Ford, his foresight kind of brought us into the mix business. And we changed kind of courses. We started doing more custom mixes. Now we've got 8 mixers that feed 12 different packing lines, everything from those small little pouch mixes you see up to 2,000-pound totes on the food side. And we've grown our feed business into some other areas. We're O'Keene. They do mostly bulk flour going to commercial bakeries. But we've really expanded our network of what we do. So in the 90s, we started capturing back some of our ability to source grain locally. We re-envisioned what it meant to buy local, and we wanted to have as much, not necessarily control, but ability to source wheat from the places we wanted to source wheat. And so we started buying or building facilities across western Oklahoma. Now we've got 8 grain receiving locations where we provide a market to those producers in those areas. And that brings us, enough capacity to really manage what we do year in, year out as a flour mill. We're proud that Oklahoma is a big wheat growing state. I was talking earlier about, the amount of wheat that's grown in Oklahoma. It not only feeds just the flour mill or the export market for flour, but it does so much to provide something for the cattle market. I think of, so many acres of wheat that get planted in Oklahoma are planted not to grow wheat, but to feed cattle throughout the winter. And so it's really entwined and just a really connected industry when it comes to what the wheat industry does for Oklahoma, does for the full spectrum of serving food to our folks. But as we continue to grow and expand, now we've got 7 retail centers. Some of them are connected to our grain receiving locations. Some of them are standalone retail centers, like the one we have here in Shawnee. And those are there really primarily just to serve folks like you guys, to serve farmers and ranchers across the state, to meet their needs, whether they're producing, a farm-grown agricultural product, or they're growing livestock, or chickens or goats or whatever, but really providing them the services they need. But when we take all of these things that are very local, it's sometimes I am reminded that we reach into a vast network when it comes to our products. We've got products that are sold primarily in Oklahoma, regionally through Texas and the Southeast, but we also expand globally. We've got a few customers in Southeast Asia and in the Caribbean where products go. We've got some national restaurant chains that we make custom mixes for that are going all over the nation, and some of that's going overseas as well. So when you think about just our local connections of bringing wheat and grain into our community, supplying other producers with those other things, they're really far-reaching across a wide spectrum. When I think about our business units, we started out just as a flour mill, and we produced a little bit of feed with the byproducts. We've grown into really 3 core areas. Our food division, where we focus on retail and food service. Our feed division, where it's going to be livestock feed, whether that's chickens or cattle or goats or horses. In the last few years, we've really grown into pet food as well. And then also our farm services, where that we can help producers with their marketing plans, help provide an opportunity for them to get the best value for their grain in that the market may provide, whether it be agronomy services, providing those nutrient applications and best practices for production agriculture, and then again our retail centers fall in that category. I was talking with Miss Carnegie earlier. We're one of the few flour feed mills left in the country. They just don't exist anymore, and that's one of those really cool things that we pride ourselves in that we can take our flour products and we can take our byproducts and really expand the value for our producers. Skipped a slide. But to talk a little bit about our food division, that's probably what most people think of when they think of Shawnee Milling Company. It's those small little pouches that you buy at the grocery store, or it's the 5-pound bag of flour or cornmeal that you get, and those are very important to us. That's part of our tradition, and we're very proud of that tradition. But then we get into food service, and we've really seen growth in that area, where we'll see smaller restaurant chains that have been making something in the back kitchen for years. They see growth in their business, and now they're putting in multiple locations across the state, or they're growing outside of the state's boundaries, and they're like, we can't keep making the same thing the same way at all these locations over and over. What can you do to make this easier for us? And they bring us their recipes, and we run it through our lab, and we produce a product that is simple for them to produce consistently and repetitively in a kitchen. And whether that be a pizza, a breader, or any other kind of custom blend that they may look for. And again, our feed division, we sell a lot of livestock feed through our retail channels. We do a lot of ranch direct and farm direct feed, whether it's, again, the full spectrum of species. But again, pet food has been a big growth area for us. As folks continue to look for ways to feed their animals in a more wholesome way, but then a big focus of ours is also we want not only to provide a wholesome, nutritious product to an animal, but also a value to that owner. A lot of times there's things that go real crazy and real expensive, but we've tried to really focus on how can we focus on nutrition and value at the same time, and that's been an area that we've been able to really succeed in. And just to expand on our farm services, this is what might touch some of you folks, but within our network of facilities, we've got local facilities that can provide support and help and resources for producers, whether they're growing thousands of acres of wheat and corn, or hoop houses of vegetables, and they have fruit trees or pecans, and we've brought in a fella that managed one of our stores. He's now managing our agronomy services division, and he's kind of he's our local expert on all things agronomy, and he's got connections that if he doesn't know the answer, by golly, he'll find the answer out for you. But that's an area that we continue to see opportunity in. And then again, grain marketing, which is primarily for those large producers, but we source grain from all over the state. And so we find that there's lots of producers in the state that may not have a farm in an area that we're located, but we're sending trucks to their farm, and we're trying to bring that grain in when it's definitely something that's going to meet the need of our variety of mixes. Since wheat is what I do, I do trade all of the grain for our company. I buy all of the grain, I buy all of our ingredients, and then all of our other procurement falls under me. But, wheat's been in the news a lot lately with what's happened in Ukraine. But as you can see, there's a lot of wheat grown all over the world. There's a wheat crop being harvested just about 12 months out of the year, somewhere across the globe. And as you can see, where a lot of that is grown in the United States is of course, Kansas and Oklahoma. But as we look at the global market, the U.S. is a pretty small sliver of global exports. I don't know how visible that is, but yeah, when you look at that, that's pretty current. Ukraine used to provide roughly 15% of the world market with wheat. that's kind of shifted, and now Russia's the global wheat supplier of choice for the most part. U.S. has become a residual supplier. So what that means for a local wheat producer is they're no longer supplying wheat on a global stage as much as they used to be. And quite frankly, that global wheat price has dropped so much because Russia's just trying to get as much wheat out the door as they can at a cheap price. Their market has become local. It's become a domestic market where, you know, a producer's best value is going to be that domestic market, whether that's, you know, a Shawnee mill or mills in Kansas, mills in Texas. And that's where the value has been provided to flour mills, or excuse me, for wheat producers here in the last year or so. To talk a little bit about wheat and how it's milled, again, flour milling is at the core of what we do. We also have a corn mill that we produce a lot of corn products off of, but the processes are fairly similar. But you basically have three parts of the wheat kernel, and our goal is to get as much of that endosperm out. That's where that high quality flour is, that starchy product that you're looking for, that is going to provide, you know, what you need for a baking product. I know you'd mentioned some home bakers. Some things to think about when you're thinking about your flour. An all-purpose flour could range from a 10 protein all the way up to a 12 or 13 protein. It's just a kind of a big mixed flour. This is the average protein of a crop year maybe. Every year wheat is going to be different based off of nutrient applications, based off of varieties, based off of a lot of it is going to be Mother Nature. And so we could have a low protein crop year, we could have a high protein crop year, we could have a little bit of everything crop year. And that's what we really like. We have about 8 or 9 mill mixes that are cross sections of all those different protein blends. And what protein does is it provides that gluten strength that you're looking for in your bread that's going to help it rise and hold its shape. And if you don't have the gluten strength, it may rise and fall back down, but it gives you some elasticity when you're making a pizza. You can stretch it out and it'll hold its shape. So those variations in protein provide those gluten strengths, and I'm going to try not to like nerd out on you guys on flour science, and I'm not even the guy to talk to. I just know enough to get in trouble with it. But that's what we look for, is we look for a variety of proteins to fill those variety of mixes that we have to meet those specific needs of each of our customers. And so what we look for is when we're milling that flour, it's going to go through the elevator. We're going to segregate it based off of protein. That way later we can look at it and say, okay, does this bin match up with this bin? Can we make what we need? Our elevator, it's constantly blending and turning wheat to make those blends, because it's all going to start with the wheat, right? And then it goes through some scouring. It'll clean it up a little bit, get it ready for the mill, and it goes into a tempering process, which that is where we add water to wheat. Who knew? That made sense. But what it does is it's softening that bran, that outer shell of the wheat. That can be done with steam. That can be done with just water. And so it goes through a tempering process where it's held in a bin for a period of time to soften that outer bran. And then it's sent through rollers, and it's literally 2 metal rollers that the wheat's fed through, and it's cracking the wheat, it's stripping the bran from the endosperm, and it runs through a roller up into some sifter boxes, and those have different screens, and it's sifted, and it could go through 12 to 15 different passes of a roller and a sifter, and a roller and a sifter, and we're taking that endosperm out, and we're moving that into our flour streams, and we're taking the bran and the lower grade flour and the germ into other streams that may end up in feed product or just straight a germ product that's going to go elsewhere. But we're left with then the byproducts and the flour. And that's basically milling in a very, very small nutshell. But we take all of those byproducts, those go to our feed mill, and that's where we then we take and we create rations. Most of our livestock feed have a base ration using the wheat midds that come from our flour mill. And so that's that process. When we think about food safety, as you will get into, I'm sure, that is something that we pride ourselves on at Shawnee Milling. And we know that we would not have been around for 117 years if we weren't producing A, quality products, and B, safe products. And that goes from just not just our food side, but also into our feed side. With new FSMA rules that are in place, we're constantly evaluating what we're doing within our facilities that we need to do better, ways we can improve upon some of those things that continue to provide that safe, quality product that your families are looking for, that you're looking for as a baker. And so we are SQF Edition 9 certified. That's jargon for saying it's a third-party audit that is extremely strict and very tough. But we've got folks in place. We've got an entire team that does nothing but food safety. We've got a sanitation crew that does nothing but clean the plant all day long. And that's to ensure that we're providing a safe environment for those food products. It also means we have an approved supplier program, whether that's a grain supplier that's sending wheat to our mill, or whether that's an ingredient supplier that's providing, all of the spices or the sugar or the other products that go into our mixes, or even our packaging suppliers that the products are going into. So it's just a very big and in-depth process to make sure that we're doing everything that needs to be done to produce those safe, quality products. We also have an on-site quality lab where we're testing grain as it comes in to make sure that the grain starts out with the right attributes and qualities that we're looking for, that it has the right safety attributes, whether that be mycotoxins in corn or even mycotoxins in wheat. But we're testing those products to make sure that it's something that we can use not just for food, but also in our feed product, because we know that our byproducts aren't just going to go somewhere else and somebody else gets to deal with the problem. We know our byproducts are staying right where they came from, and we're going to turn around and put those into pet food for your family pet. And so throughout that process, on the front side, we're testing our incoming raw material, but then even through the process, as we're milling grain, as we're processing feed, we're taking samples and checking, making sure that the moistures are correct, the proteins are correct, the other attributes that we're looking for specifically in a flour product are going to meet the needs of the finished product that it's intended for. And then once we have that product made, let's say it's a pizza mix, we're going to take a sample of that pizza mix out of the mixer before it gets packed, and we're going to check it. We're going to make sure it's all right. And then we're going to take a bag of that pizza mix off the production line. We're going to bake it. We're going to make sure it bakes right, because the last thing we want is for something to end up at a restaurant thousands of miles away and they say, hey, this is funny. It doesn't seem right. That way we know with confidence that we can ship product that's going to perform the way it needs to perform. And then, of course, we're FDA inspected, and those are some pretty interesting audits, but we've always gone well with them, and they've been good to work with us. But as we think about our past, we've got a really long history of producing feed, of being a part of our communities, of producing flour, and being a market to producers. But we do see some exciting things ahead, and some of those are going to be in our pet food growth. We definitely see some opportunities for continued growth in those areas. And as we see trends changing for what comes out with new nutritional guidelines, and also some new experience that comes from nutritional needs of pets, we're continuing to look at opportunities to tweak those lines and change those to meet the needs of pets and their owners. We continue to see growth in our custom mix business. And what that is really doing is providing an opportunity for us to pull value through the channel. Whenever we do those custom mixes, it's usually somebody that says, I've got a problem, I need a solution. Those are areas where we can provide value to that customer, but also part of that solution is going to come straight off the farm, where we can go to a producer and say, hey, I've got a challenge. Can you grow this kind of wheat? Can you produce this kind of thing where I can pay you a premium for it if you can do it? And so we can take and provide a premium to that producer, pass that through to the customer, and everybody, ends up winning in those solutions. And then continued growth in our supplementary businesses, which may include that grain marketing aspect, those agronomy service aspects, and just providing those services to agricultural producers in each of our communities. As I think about Shawnee Milling, and anytime somebody asks me to talk about Shawnee Milling, this is actually one of my favorite quotes. And obviously I never heard it until I started working here. But it's no one of us would amount to much without the help and influence of family and friends. And we really believe that. And I especially, getting to deal with producers day in, day out, that's really, really key to what I do every day. Because we know that we would not exist if it were not for producers growing the products that we get to turn into food. And we wouldn't exist if it weren't for the customers who come back for 100 years, generation after generation, wanting Shawnee Milling flour for their families. Or those restaurants that are coming to us saying, man, I can't believe you were able to do this. We're going to continue being a partner with you. And that's something that we really value, is our partnerships with producers, our partnerships with the end users, and being able to really create a network, an environment where it truly is like a family. And that's a proud thing for us, is that even though there's been lots of opportunities, lots of consolidations, like I said, there aren't many of us around that are feed and food manufacturers in the same facility. And we're a family-owned company, still owned by the same Ford family that it was owned by in 1906. And so we do pride ourselves in bringing all of the pieces of the puzzle together to really bring value to the channel in the best way possible. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we're kind of switching things around. So I'm going to use Laura. I'm going to have Laura go next. I know we're changing things up. I'm going to have Laura kind of visit with you a little bit, and she is utilizing the Home Baking Act, and she was a former restaurant owner, and she does utilize some of our local wheat as well as ancient wheats or specialty crop wheats, which I think that's some discussion we may get into later. But if Laura Carnegie would come up, and she is from Elmore City, and I'm going to let her visit a little bit about her and what she does.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm a little shorter. Just a little shorter. I'll move this down a little bit. So what's kind of interesting is my great-grandparents on my paternal side sold their farm in Kentucky for $1 to a flour feed miller in Evansville, Indiana, put the family in the wagon and moved across. So what's interesting is my family never, I didn't grow up in that Tri-City area with the mill, but it was always visited and that type of thing. My father was an attorney. We moved around a lot, all over the world, different places. But what's in your core and what's in your heart, you tend to generally navigate back to as you get older. So it's kind of fun to get to kind of chat and go, yeah, it is flour and feed. And it's, and hearing the stories and knowing that, the flour feed sacks. My background is fashion design, fashion marketing. So what on earth am I doing selling, sourdough bread at the farmer's market? But it's coming back to that root, coming back to the core, back at heart. My husband's a 5-star French, 4-star Italian chef. By trade, I'm fashion design, so I'm like, you feed us, I'll clothe us, we're good. And life and God takes you in a lot of different directions. So what's been fun is to be able to kind of come back to those roots of what's most important. And when you hear those stories of that this is, my family started in 1904. This is 1906. And so it's, something had to be done right. So what's wonderful is to see that Shawnee Mills, after all these years, is still doing, no matter how big they've gotten, they've kept that small town family core value at heart to say what you are doing, what we're doing in our backyards matters to big corporations. So it's been exciting to be a part of the farmers market over the last couple of years here. Our background obviously then is restaurant. We're kind of used to whatever you can do in the kitchen and get out on a table and people, you're putting out good products, people are going to buy. So when you look at then packaging and how are you going to take what you've done for your family that's been successful and everybody wants to buy it, well, how do you package it? How do you market it? How do you tell your story? How do you get that out there in a safe way? And it scares me to death to see people who sell food that they don't even know what food handlers is. They don't know what food safety is. They don't know food temps. It's dangerous. We have to be very aware of what are we doing, how are we advocating for. I love that Shawnee Mills is so careful with their safety. It's important to be aware of that, and that's where you're going to come in and kind of help facilitate a little bit more. So like I said, our background is we get it on the table, we get it out the door to people on the table, right, through the restaurants. But I have been so grateful to learn all of the resources that are available here in Oklahoma. we've lived in Oklahoma. We sold our restaurants in Utah. We had 5 restaurants, 500 plus employees. I mean, it was massive. And we've been now in Oklahoma for about 10 years. Well, we've been back on the land for some years. Now, I was in an accident before, so we've kind of, you know, take a little while to get the engine rolling again and kind of get the body healed up and doing things. But what we're doing now is that value added. That's what I'm finding in my family, and we do it as a family. So I take the flour, and I like to geek out on wheat. You know, it's just kind of fun when you find a commodity or something that you enjoy. Really digging into the resources that Oklahoma has. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be wheat. It can be a particular flour. You have, like smelling flour, not baking flour. Oklahoma has tremendous resources to take anything that you have in your heart that's a desire to learn or understand more. How can I cultivate that? How can I generate an income for me and for my family? That's what this is about. So to be able to say, I love to bake. My first science experiment in 6th grade was how to make bread. You know, I'm showing up, I'm like, this is with salt, without salt, with yeast, without yeast, all that kind of stuff. And then everybody, you know, throughout the years, you go on, and my living in New Mexico, rain dances, and we had trading posts on the Navajo Reservation, so that's where the fashion came in, and I wanted to understand more about cultures. You know, at 9 years old, I'm painting a fence. I spent 2 weeks out on a trading post that we had. And I'm out. I mean, it took me forever to paint. I think my paintbrush must have been about this big, because it was a big fence, but it took me a long time. And I worked hard for beaded barrettes. That's what I wanted. That was my pay for 2 weeks. I worked cheap for my parents. But I watched this little boy kind of herd this ewe down this dusty road, walked in, put the ewe in the pen, went in, came out, gas can, disappeared. Late that afternoon, a little blue beat-up pickup truck came in, and it was, you know, they parked, and all of a sudden, everybody starts piling out of this truck, and I didn't know how the truck made it into town, for one thing, but you have the dad and the mom and the grandma in the front bed of the truck, and the front cab, and then you had, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 people in the back, and out pops this little boy, and I was like, well, he just left with a gas can. So 9, 10 years old, I'm finally beginning to understand how trading and understanding that you have something, I can use what you have, how do we make that exchange happen? And so I walked in and I saw, you know, watched this family go in and buy colored sand or some beads and leather and different things. Towards the end of that 2 weeks, the dad and mom brought the grandma back, and it was sand paintings and beaded moccasins. And I thought,